Good afternoon. I now call to order today's meeting of the Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System. Carol, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Barry Busada.
Here.
Dr. Jimmy Clark.
Here.
Dr. John Condos.
Here.
Mr. Steve Davison.
Here.
Ms. Lola Donahoe. Mr. Tom Kitchen. Ms. Mimi Methvin.
Here.
Mr. Al Perkins. Mr. Dana Peterson. Ms. Elizabeth Pierre.
Dana Peterson is present. I apologize.
Good. Okay, thank you. Mr. Virgil Robinson.
Here.
Mr. Mark Romero.
Here.
Ms. Christine Russell.
Here.
Mr. Joe Salter.
Here.
Mr. Brad Stevens.
Here.
Ms. L'Oreal Williams. We have a quorum.
Al Perkins is here, Ms. Carroll.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carol, and welcome to every one of you. I would like to advise you today that the content of today's meeting, including the chat, is being recorded and subject to public records requests. So please keep that in mind as we conduct business. To members of the public who are viewing this via YouTube, be reminded that anyone who wishes to make a public comment on a particular agenda item can email publiccomment@ulsystem.edu. And along with your comment, please include your full name, your affiliation, as well as the agenda item number upon which you are commenting. Thank you. At this time, may I have a motion and a second to, number one, accept the certification to operate virtually, and two, to dispense with committee deliberations and meet as a committee of the whole? So
I move the motion.
It moved by Ms. Lola Donahoe and seconded by Mr. John Condos that we proceed. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion had. Thank you. Mr. Salter, at this time, would you lead us in an invocation as we begin our meeting?
I will. As I pray aloud, I'd ask that you pray silently on your own, please. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity we have to meet today. We thank you for the opportunity you've given us to serve in this important, these different roles that we've been given. Lord, we would ask that you would guide and direct us today, give us wisdom and to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the citizens in our state and also the students, Lord, serve. Also, Lord, I would ask today that you would, in a very special way, that you would provide healing and comfort to Supervisor Russell's father, and that you would give strength to family members as they care for him. We'd also express thanks, Lord, for the progress that Supervisor Methvin is making. And Lord, perhaps there are others as well that have unspoken requests or needs that we're not aware of. We'd ask, Lord, that you would minister to their needs as well. And Lord, we would claim your promise. You hear our prayers, and that would be our request today. I thank you, Lord, for the fact that you've given us some relief from the virus in our state. Again, I thank you for the many blessings that you've given us and ask for forgiveness of sin for Christ's sake. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Mr. Salter. Today, we welcome our newest board member, Dana Peterson. He was appointed by Governor Edwards to represent the 2nd Congressional District and complete Mr. Carter's unexpired term until December 31st, 2026. Brandon DeQueer, will you please administer the oath of office to Mr. Peterson at this time?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Mr. Peterson, if you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I apologize for the background. I, Dana Peterson.
I, Dana Peterson.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
Or affirm.
Or affirm.
That I will support the Constitution.
Support the Constitution.
And laws of the United States.
And laws of the United States.
And the Constitution.
And the Constitution.
And laws of this state.
And laws of this state.
And that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge all the duties
discharge all the duties.
incumbent on me
You broke up.
as a member of the Board of Supervisors
As a member of the Board of Supervisors
of the University of Louisiana System,
of the University of Louisiana System,
according to the best of my ability
according to the best of my ability
and understanding,
and understanding.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Look forward to joining
Thank-
and serving with everybody. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeQueer. And Mr. Peterson, I was going to ask you if you wanted to make some comments or statements, you could do so.
I won't take up too much time from folks, but just want to say, I'm glad to be a part of the team and look forward to serving, and certainly share in the mission and passion of our university system, and want to extend whatever talents and capacity I have to that effort. So look forward to working with everybody, and I appreciate all of the notes from everyone and well wishes, and look forward to serving.
Thank you so much. We look forward to working with you as well. At this time, may I please have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the last board meeting?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Stevenson, second by Mr. Romero. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? As I said today, we are meeting as a committee of the whole, and everyone can vote on all items. Each committee chair will conduct business of that particular committee. Are there any questions? Hearing none, thank you. We will start with the Grievance Committee. That particular committee did meet earlier today. Supervisor Methvin will report on the action of the Grievance Committee.
Thank you. The Grievance Committee just concluded its meeting today. We met earlier after careful review of the process used by McNeese State University. The committee recommended that the grievance filed by Mr. Saram be denied. Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendation of the committee.
We have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Methvin and it's been motioned by Ms. Methvin and seconded by Ms. Donahoe that we accept the recommendation of the committee. Is there any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And anything else, committee?
No, thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move to Academic and Student Affairs. Dr. Clark, would you please address the items under the Academic and Student Affairs Committee?
Certainly, Madam Chair. Thank you so much, and congratulations on becoming chair. We look forward to working with you, and point of personal privilege just to welcome Supervisor Peterson. Also looking forward to the opportunity to see you in person at some point here.
Thank you.
We have 9 items on the Academic and Student Affairs Committee agenda. All are items that require approval. Dr. Janine Kahn, the Provost Vice President for Academic Affairs, is going to provide the report. Dr. Kahn.
Thank you, Supervisor Clark, and good afternoon to you, members of the board, and those attending the meeting virtually. There are 9 items that we have, and I will briefly present each for your consideration. Agenda item G1 is a request from Nicholls State University to award an honorary doctorate of science to Mr. Wendell A. Currell. The university would like to recognize their alumnus for the leadership he has provided in the areas of hurricane preparation and readiness, levee engineering and management, and coastal issues, all of which have great impact on the region that Nicholls serves. Agenda item G2 is a request from Northwestern State University to convert the existing Bachelor of Science in Theater with a concentration in musical theater to a Bachelor of Fine Art in Musical Theater. The university, along with the National Association of Schools of Theater, their accrediting agency, believe the existing musical theater concentration would better serve students and industry by converting the concentration to a standalone degree, which will allow for a more focused, rigorous, and balanced curriculum. Agenda item G3 is a request from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette to name the School of Nursing the LHC Group Myers School of Nursing. The university would like to acknowledge and honor the LHC Group and its founders for their enduring support and historic gift benefiting UL Lafayette's College of Nursing and Allied Health Sciences. Agenda items G4 through G7 pertain to the University of Louisiana at Monroe. G4 is a request to terminate the Doctor of Occupational Therapy that was approved by this board and the Board of Regents in 2018. ULM pursued the OTD when the Accrediting Council of Occupational Therapy Education transitioned to requiring a doctorate as an entry-level credential. ACOT has since reversed its position, so the OTD is no longer a needed offering, especially since ULM has a very strong Master of Occupational Therapy that completes 30 students annually. G5 is a request to enter into an articulation agreement with LCTCS in order to establish a clear pathway for eligible AAS and ASN graduates to be admitted into ULM's Bachelor of Science program at senior standing and benefit from a rate of $200 per credit hour for the remaining 30 credits of degree requirements for the BSN. G6 is a request to offer an undergraduate certificate in professional and creative writing. The 18 credit hour UC will develop the skills and knowledge of students interested in professional writing by providing an intensive experience in the students' choice of creative genres, as well as courses in professional, technical, scientific, and grant writing. And G7, the last item from ULM, is a request for approval to award an honorary doctorate of humane letters to Mr. Henry Ear. The university would like to bestow this distinction in recognition of all that he has contributed to the design and construction industry, as well as to ULM. And the last two items, G8 and G9, are from the University of New Orleans. G8 is a request to award Dr. Jericho Brown an honorary doctor of humane letters. Dr. Brown is an alumnus of the University of New Orleans and is a Pulitzer Prize winner. And G9 is a request to name the College of Engineering the Dr. Brown A. Savoy College of Engineering in recognition of Dr. Robert A. Bobby Savoy, an alumnus of the university who has provided significant economic, financial, and charitable contributions to the state of Louisiana, the city of New Orleans, and the University of New Orleans. Dr. Clark, that concludes the summary of all action items, and I'm happy to answer any question members of the board might have.
Do members of the board have questions? If not, I have just a couple of comments and I think maybe a request on number 3, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette's request in the documents that we were provided to review in advance of the meeting. This was referred to as a historic donation or a historic circumstance. Is Dr. Savoy on by chance? I'm putting him on the spot. I did not prepare him if he wanted to say a few things about this particular circumstance, the naming of the School of Nursing.
Well, sure, and I appreciate that very much, Dr. Clark, but you put me on the spot without preparation on many occasions, so I'm not surprised by it at all. The LHC group and the founders, Keith and Ginger Myers, they are both graduates of the university and started a home healthcare business when Ginger decided she was going to take care of an elderly neighbor back in the mid-1990s. Their company has continued to grow. They are now in 35 states, District of Columbia, about 40,000 employees, and they've been very generous to the university for over a decade now. Their gift in total to the College of Nursing is around $20 million, and also another $10 million to the athletic department. But we're recognizing the $20 million gift here, so we're very thankful for their support.
Thank you, Dr. Savoy, and certainly thank you to the LHC group for the support of the institution. Dr. Khan, I do appreciate for the board members to know, Dr. Khan helps me and takes me through in advance of the meeting a number of the different questions. One thing did come up in our conversation, and I do want to elevate it here, having to do with item G5, the request to enter into a transfer articulation agreement, UL Monroe's request. I certainly support it. I continue to be concerned that we have an extraordinary number of such MOUs throughout the state. This one in particular, there needed to be because of the financial circumstance. But I'm wondering, Dr. Khan, there's hundreds of these MOUs. Is that fair to say?
Supervisor Clark, there are many, and I would probably say toward the hundreds, if not that much, but certainly toward that spectrum of number that universities have predominantly entered into our sister institutions with those community colleges in the region and that are next door, I guess you could say. And we've seen this growth as we've tried to expand the breadth and depth of transfer articulation among 2- and 4-year institutions. And so we do have many. Recently, the Board of Regents did do a query of how many are in existence, and they're working to compile that information for all systems in here in Louisiana.
My questioning is simply that, one, I'm entirely, supportive and encouraging of greater articulation and development of pathways, and certainly for our 4-year institutions to work hand in hand with the approximate 2-year institutions. I'm just somewhat befuddled sometimes trying to understand why we have to develop all these individual MOUs, college to college. If there's a way to look at this more at a system level, at least for certain types of programs, I'd encourage us to do so. I think it would mean less time for institutions trying to work on these agreements, and I just put that on the table for future discussion.
And we certainly will start looking at from that angle, Supervisor Clark. There will be some elements, like you said, the financial component that we would certainly need to address, but we can certainly start looking at areas of nursing, business, chunks of disciplines to see if we can start sewing this all up from a system standpoint rather than an institutional standpoint. And so thank you very much for bringing that to attention, and we'll certainly move forward and keep the board abreast of that.
Dr. Clark, I would just like to ask a question dealing with that same issue. This request by ULM is for the entire state group or for an individual community college?
Supervisor Donahoe, it would be for all community colleges within the Louisiana Technical Community College system that offer the Associate of Applied Science or the Associate of Science in Nursing.
Okay, so that looks like that's a move forward to what Dr. Clark is discussing. If we could do this for all of our 9 universities, if they could have agreements with the entire community college system throughout Louisiana, that might cut down on the number of individual MOUs that would be necessary.
Thank you, Supervisor Donahoe, for both your observation and apparent support for the concept. Are there any other questions or comments on any of the items, G1 to 9? All right, if no one requires further clarification, I'd like to recommend approval of items G1 to G9. May I have a motion and a second?
Condos motion.
Supervisor Condos gives a motion. Is there a second?
Methvin second.
Supervisor Methvin is seconded. Are there any questions, comments from the board? Any comments from the public at this time? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion is approved. Is there any other business to come before the committee at this time?
No, Supervisor Clark, there's no further business.
Great, then I believe I pass this on then to athletics.
Right, Dr. Conlon will address items under the athletic committee.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. I'd like to start by saying I'd like to congratulate the schools, the coaches, and the student athletes on their significant accomplishments that were highlighted in the board materials that were recently distributed. quite a number of schools, quite a number of great achievements by our student athletes and their coaching staff. So just wanted to note that before we got started. We have 11 items on the athletic committee today. Mr. Bruce Janae will give us a brief overview of the consent agenda items by campus. Mr. Janae, if you could, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Condos and members of the board. Item H1 to H2 is from Louisiana Tech, requesting approval of contract with Michael Conroy, assistant men's basketball coach, and Joshua Taylor, head women's softball coach. Item H3 is also from Louisiana Tech, approval of a revised athletic home game complimentary ticket policy effective November 1st, 2021. H4 to H5 are from Southeastern, requesting approval of a contract with Chris McBride, who's the head women's soccer coach, and Ben Gibson, associate men's baseball coach. Item H6 to H7 are from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, requesting approval of contract with Lou Godin, head men's tennis coach, and Stephanie Vallejo, head women's tennis coach. Item H8 is also from ULL, approval of amended contracts for employment for various assistant football coaches. Item H9, University of Louisiana Monroe, we're requesting approval of contract with Terry Bowden, who's the head men's football coach. Items H10 to H11 from the University of New Orleans, approval of a contract with Blake Dean, head men's baseball coach, and Tim Duncan, Vice President of Athletics and Recreation. And I would like to point out that all of these contracts or amendments follow the basic template that the Board of Supervisors has set. And those are all the items I have, Dr. Condos.
Thank you, Bruce. These agenda items have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. Do we have any questions or comments from any of the members?
I
have a question.
Yes, Dr. Clark.
Just on the effective date, I believe one of them is listed as July 1st of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. The reason for that, and I did talk to Tim Duncan, who is the athletic director. He wanted to go ahead and lock in Blake Dean because Blake was being recruited by a number of different colleges and universities. And I did speak to him, and I thought that was a little bit unusual, but it's something that he wanted to go ahead and lock him in so he could let all the recruits know and current players that Blake Dean would definitely be back.
Thank you.
I had heard someone else.
Lola Donahoe.
Yes, Ms. Donahoe, please.
For item 8 from ULL, don't we normally name the coaches or just various coaches? I mean, that just seems a little odd to me.
Right. Well, within the executive summary, I did list them, and I can give you the names, but I did provide it in the executive summary. There was about 7 or 8 of them. I just thought for the brevity of time, but in the future, I can begin to name them. And should you want those names, I could go to my file and name them for you, but it's various assistant football coaches that they wanted to amend their salary and ending dates. And I do apologize for being short and not listing the names.
I just prefer to know them, but I mean, that's just me. So.
Okay, well, I mean, would you like me to name them, or you want to follow up with an email to, I mean, sorry.
Of course, in the future, we'll go ahead and list those out. Individually. Part of the summary you should give it. That'd be great.
Any other members have questions or comments? Any public questions or comments?
This is Jim Henderson. I know ULM wants to ensure that we lock Coach Bowden in now before he wins another game this weekend. So if we could get that one done, particularly, they would be very happy.
May I have a motion and a second for approval of items H1 to H11, please?
So moved. Stevens.
Second.
Second by Gloria Williams. Mr. Condos.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. If we have no other business up at this time, this concludes the business of the Athletic Committee. May I have a motion to adjourn? I'm sorry, was there a comment? May I have a motion to adjourn in a second, please?
So you want to adjourn, you'll just, your meeting as a
Okay,
committee.
well then I'll pass it off to facilities.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Basad.
Thank you. We have 9 items on the Facilities Planning Committee that are all consent agenda. Mr. Bruce Janay will provide a brief overview of the agenda items by campus.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basada, and I appreciate you stepping in as chair for Mr. Kinchin, who is traveling. Okay, item I1 is from University of Louisiana Systems for proposal to revise a current board rule that deals with naming university facilities effective October 28, 2021, as authorized by Act 79 of the 2013 Louisiana Legislature. An entire building can now be named after a living person or persons. Therefore, the board rule would be amended accordingly. Item I2 is from Nichols. Approval to amend its 5-year capital outlay submission to include the new nursing building planning and construction estimated at $20 million. Recent conversations with local and state leaders have resulted in a renewed interest to grow the nursing program, and additional space is critical to accomplish this mission. The college currently only admits about 80 candidates each semester into its clinical program, accepted from a pool of applicants that go greater than 200 applicants each semester. The college is limited in its ability to admit additional students due to reaching a facility capacity to accommodate more students and personnel. Item I3 from Nichols as well. Approval to lease approximately 21 acres of land located at the University Forum to Ducks Unlimited. The University Forum consists of approximately 270 acres. This proposed lease of approximately 21 acres would create an additional collaborative partnership between Nichols and Ducks Unlimited. The objective of this project is to improve the water quality within the Bayou Fos watershed as part of the Louisiana Restoration Area Environmental Assessment. Construction of the wetland will include dirt work for construction of 3 levees, installation of 2 open culverts for field drainage and access, installation of 2 water control structures to control water levels and slowly release water from the unit. And finally, number 4, construction of a pump water station to pump water from Bayou Fos into the unit. Upon completion of the project, Ducks Unlimited will execute a donation to the university. The term of this ground lease shall begin on November 1st, 2021 and end on June 30th, 2022. Item I4 from Southeastern. Approval to enter into a ground lease with the Southeastern Louisiana University Foundation to renovate the inn, which is the old president's residence on Southeastern's campus as authorized by state law. The renovation and enhancements, which will include furnishings and equipment of the inn, is estimated to be approximately $600,000. The primary purpose of this ground lease is to allow the foundation to renovate and provide additional space at the inn, which is greatly needed to integrate office and meeting space to advance the efforts of the foundation development office and advancement services. Upon completion of the project, the foundation will execute a donation to the university. The lease will terminate on December 31st, 2022, or at such a time as a donation approvement is executed, whichever occurs first. Item I5 is from University of Louisiana Lafayette. They are requesting authorization from the board to utilize designated capital outlay funds for the acquisition of the former Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital property, Society of the Roman Catholic Church of the Diocese of Lafayette, as authorized by Act 398 of the 2021 Louisiana Legislature. ULL has reached an agreement with the diocese for the purchase of their 5.7 acre portion of the former Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital property. This property was identified as a necessary acquisition by the campus master plan back in 2012 for its ability to be able to link the main campus with the athletic campus. ULL has requested and been appropriated $4.5 million through the Board of Regents and Capital Outlay funds for this land acquisition as authorized by Act 485 of the 2021 Louisiana Legislative Session. The university engaged a certified appraiser to review this property, and the appraiser has delivered a report noting that the appraised value is $4.175 million, thus supporting the purchase price that they are asking for from the diocese. Upon approval by the board, ULL will begin to proceed with the assistance of system staff, legal counsel, and other appropriate state agencies to move towards the purchase of the property in conformity with Louisiana laws and regulations. Timing of this approval is very critical to allow the university to undertake steps necessary to conform to the deadline established by all parties to enter into purchase agreement on December 20th, 2021. Finally, items I-6 are from I-9 or from the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Approval to name certain facilities as follows. The new softball student athlete training leadership center would be known as the Stangler Young Leadership Center. The agriculture department green space currently on campus would be known as the Flint and Jimmy Robertson Agricultural Greenhouse Complex. Then they want to name several rooms within the School of Construction Management building. Room 128 would be named for Cajun Industries. Their patio would be named for Turner Industries. And room 127, the Construction Management building, would be known as Payne Trust of Longview. Finally, room 121 in the School of Construction Management building would be named the Jim V. Haddock Student Study Center. And I wanted to point out that the executive summaries that have been provided to each of you details the support that President Berry has provided to us in accordance with the board rule for naming facilities. And those are the 9 items I have, Mr. Posada.
Thank you, Mr. Janay. All these items have been reviewed by board legal staff and are recommended for approval. Of course, if any member has a question or wishes to discuss any of these items, please let me know.
I have a question, please. On item 5, will that acquisition connect main campus to the athletic complex completely, or is there another step in the process?
I believe we have Dr. Savoy on it. Dr. Savoy, if I could put you on the spot to answer that.
Yeah, it doesn't connect directly to either campus. It's about a block and a half from the main campus and 2 blocks from the south campus. But it ultimately, there's another piece of property that we're also trying to acquire. And ultimately, it will add about 20 acres right in the center of town and 2 blocks from other university property. It's a major and significant acquisition if we can pull it off. This is the first step, but it's an important step.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that this provision to utilize this land acquisition fund is an innovative approach. In fact, it hasn't been done since Joe Savoy was the Commissioner of Higher Ed. He may be the only one that knows how to do it and that is able to do it. But I will point out that he did it last with Bossier Parish Community College. And I forget who the chancellor was there at the time, but Joe, this brings back some good memories, and I think what an extraordinary advance for that whole region.
Thank you.
If I can add on to this, I just would like to, thank Dr. Salva both for his vision back in 2012 and the master planning circumstance. I believe Jerry Luc LeBlanc is on the phone. Others at the university have been working on this for almost a decade now, and it certainly is a historic step forward. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Jimmy, I'll echo your comments, but my comment would be I certainly appreciate his patience and persistence. Thank you for everything you do, Dr. Salva.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Ms. Anna, I have a question about item number 3 from Nichols State. I'm assuming that all these contracts and agreements have been vetted by our legal counsel or perhaps Nichols legal counsel.
Yes, Supervisor Donahoe. Anytime I develop the executive summary or the lease agreements or anything, always consult with Linda Clark and Brandon DeQueer, and then they will have comments and we'll send them back to the campus to clarify. And anyway, and that includes the executive summaries and wording. So yes, we always include DeQueer and Clark on this.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Any comments from the public? If no one requires further clarification of the agenda items, may I have a motion and a second for approval of items I1 through I9?
So moved.
Second.
Clark and Mr. Salter. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Do we have any further business at this time? If not,
I have
that
a question.
concludes. Oh, go ahead.
If I could, I have a question. I read from some of the other board material significant concern about facility issues at Grambling. And it was referenced in the document about a visit by state officials to the campus to sort of follow up on it. And I don't know if this has been discussed previously among the board, but just a question of, are those issues being resolved? Maybe that's a question for Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, Supervisor Peterson. And I know President Gallo has joined us today. He's actually going to talk a little bit about some other issues in the president's report. But there have been some structural challenges at Grambling for quite some time. Since President Gallo arrived, they've seen some significant investments, one of which is the state's first digital library, technologically enhanced library that should open in the spring semester. That'll be probably the most technologically advanced academic library to exist in the state. We've met a couple of times recently with facility planning and control and the Division of Administration on some structural things, especially related to drainage and that President Gallo and National Guard has approved, but we're waiting on some design type elements to be put in place to make permanent changes there. There are also some construction challenges that have gone through in the construction planning process. Mark Moses of Facility Planning and Control has met with us personally, is committed to working to correct some of those issues. Commissioner Darden himself visited the campus to tour these facilities and has committed his assistance. And the plan is in place, and now it's getting those resources in place to bring these to fruition. President Gallo, I'm not sure add anything to that.
Sure, and thank you for that question, Supervisor Peterson, and again, welcome to the board. We inherited about $48 million in deferred maintenance when we took over in 2016. That amount now is a little less than 30 million. So we have been making steady progress towards reducing the number of facility deficiencies that we have. Now, in particular, the projects that you speak of that were the subject of a call that was initiated by Senator Katrina Jackson, dealt with number one, the Intramural Center, which is a student-funded project that began a few years back, and we're getting very close to completing. The problem was with the contractor, not with facility planning control. There were some roofing design issues that were not included in the project, which quite frankly should have, but that really was more a function of the architects and the contractor. And so Commissioner Darden, as well as Deputy Commissioner Moses and Jason Suter, the Facility Planning Control Director, all came to campus to personally tour that facility and have taken affirmative steps to get those design and construction issues resolved. The other one deals with drainage, a drainage issue that we inherited and was subject of the 2016 flood. This is a FEMA and a FEMA funded project. And of course, being a resident of New Orleans, you know the issues one might encounter with FEMA. So the plans have been designed. It has taken way too long, quite frankly. But the project is funded, mainly funded through FEMA, and Commissioner Darden has committed the additional funds that will be needed to complete the project. But as Dr. Henderson mentioned, we took steps, and thanks to the governor and the National Guard for coming in and doing about $3 million worth of drainage work downstream that alleviates what we believe was the cause of that 2016 flooding. So those were the two main projects that were discussed in that call, again initiated by Senator Jackson. Initially, questions came up about the digital library, but again, that was no cause of the state of Louisiana or of the facility planning control. There were just some delays in cutting the fiber and doing some other things to get the digital library moving along. But it is getting very close to completion, and certainly looking forward to all of you being there when we hopefully cut the ribbon on that in first quarter of 22.
Well, great.
I'd be happy to answer other questions you may have.
No, it was great to hear, and I recognized it from the reading of the material, and since we were on the subject of facility, wanted to know that that there was progress, and appreciate the feedback.
And I could just drop in very briefly that for the last 10 months we've been engaged in our master plan project, which is the first master plan since 2007. And so again, we're about 10 months into that project. And of course, based upon some recent events, the safety component of our master plan project has been accelerated to be able to address more quickly some of those things we've already identified and we're planning to move forward on anyway. So again, look forward to having further discussions about those as well.
Great.
Is there any other business? If not, that concludes the business of the Facilities Planning Committee. The next committee is Finance.
Thank you. We have 5 items on the Finance Committee agenda today, three of which are on the consent agenda, and 2 are discussion items. Mr. Meach and Mr. Janae will provide brief overviews on the consent agenda items. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. J1, Northwestern University's request for approval of a proposed new fee rate for its postmaster certificate for eligible nursing programs. Northwestern State University requests approval to charge a reduced tuition rate for Willis Knighton Healthcare System employees who enroll in the Postmaster Certificate Family Nursing Practitioner Program or the Postmaster Certificate Adult Gerontology Acute Care Nursing Practitioner Program. Northwestern would contract with Willis Knighton, and Willis Knighton would pay tuition for its employees directly to Northwestern. The reduced tuition rate would be set at 80% of the normal tuition rate. Willis Knighton currently has approximately 38 nurse practitioner employees who will enroll in one of the 2 PMC programs. J2, University of New Orleans request for approval to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with TMTP Labs Incorporated. TMTP Labs is a Louisiana synthesis laboratory conducting research relating to development of methods for bulk production of graphene carbon nanosheets and new material based on graphene and related compounds. And the university's Advanced Materials Research Institute, AMRI, is a recognized leader in non-nanomaterials research. TMTP Labs will provide support to AMRI researchers in the development of new nanomaterial composites, including those based on graphene. TMP Labs will occupy space in UNO Science Building, and TMTP will pay UNO monthly rent of approximately $2,770. The immediate proximity of TMTP Labs to AMRI will readily allow for the exchange of ideas, the development of new technologies involving TMTP Labs and AMRI researchers, characterization of materials using AMRI state-of-the-art instrumentation, the training of undergraduate and graduate students in nanomaterials research, and the development of state and federal research proposals in basic and applied research. The Cooperative Endeavor Agreement will begin on November 1, 2021, and terminate on October 31, 2022. The agreement may be extended for additional periods by mutual agreement of the parties.
Mr. Janae?
Thank you so much, Mr. Robinson. Item J3 is from the University of New Orleans request for approval to revise its internal audit charter. This audit charter, which was last revised in October 2020, has now been modified to reflect a change in accordance with the International Professional Practice of Auditing Standards to allow and mention direct interaction with the board. The chief audit executive will have unrestricted access to communicate and interact directly with its assistant director of internal and external audit, the finance committee of the board of supervisors, as well as the entire board of supervisors. This change was suggested by the external validator who had recently completed a quality assurance review of UNO's internal audit activity, that this was a minor change, and the university auditor had been doing this, but the audit charter did not reflect the practice. So now the charter has been amended.
Okay. These items have been reviewed by the staff and are recommended for approval. Of course, if anyone has any questions or wish further discussion, please let me know. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Any comments from the public? If no one requires further clarification or further comments, I'll ask for an approval of a motion and a second for approval of items J1 through J3.
Condos for the motion.
Who is that?
John Condos.
Mr. Condos moves. May we get a second?
Second, Steve Davison.
Mr. Davison, second. Are there any objections? Without objections, those items are approved. We have now two items for discussion. One Mr. Misch will take, and one Mr. Brunet will take. Mr. Brunet will take. Gentlemen, please.
Thank you again, Mr. Robinson. I will take item J4 from the University of Louisiana System, report on internal and external audit activity for the period of August 23rd through October 24th. Earlier this week, I emailed each of you a listing of our internal and external reports that have been completed by various auditors since our last board meeting. I also included in the audit summary internal audits that are currently in progress, and also included for you a follow-up timetable to ensure that recommendations made in prior reports are implemented. This is a report only, and no action by the board is necessary. And Mr. Mesh will take item J5.
J5, University of Louisiana's discussion of fiscal year 2020-21 fourth quarter financial reports and ongoing assurances. This report is a comparison of budget to actual revenues and expenses through the fourth quarter and for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. Campuses submit their quarterly reports to the system, and they provide explanations when revenues have not reached budget estimates and when expenditures have exceeded budget estimates. For revenues, student fees were 99% of budget. And the reason is actual enrollment was slightly less than predicted and budgeted. Universities will predict how much enrollment they have well before final enrollment is concluded. And so it's basically an estimate at this point. And so the estimate was slightly different, and that's not unusual. Other revenues were 78% of budget. The reason is that budget funds were set aside for additional revenue contingencies, such as increased enrollment, but they were not needed this year. Moving on to expenditures, expenditures presented by function. Public service expenditures were 105% of budget. Universities simply provided some additional public service activities during the year. Scholarships and fellowships expenditures were 102% of budget. Campuses provided some additional scholarships to their students. Other and mandatory transfers, athletics. The operating fund for some universities transferred some additional funding to their athletic departments. So it was slightly more, well, about 15% above 100%. Expenditures presented by object. Other charges were 101% of budget. As indicated by function, and this is just another way to report it, campuses provide additional scholarships to students. Library acquisitions were 133% of budget, and campuses provided some additional funding to support their libraries. Now, although this was not an increase over budget, I thought this was interesting. Travel expenditures were only 8% of budget. And the reason is because COVID-19 severely restricted university travel this year, and consequently, universities spent much less on travel during the year. And this allowed them to spend in other areas of the budget. In their quarterly reports, campuses also report results of auxiliary and athletic operations. For auxiliary operations, COVID-19 and hurricanes had an impact on campus auxiliary operations, and some campuses experienced deficits. And these campuses experience accumulative and current year deficits. Campuses are able to apply HERF funds, which are federal funds, to offset revenue losses caused by COVID-19. In athletic operations, campuses are also experiencing current year operational and cumulative fund balance deficits. COVID-19 and hurricanes have significantly reduced athletic revenues, such as game guarantee contracts, shared revenues, ticket sales and concessions, and so on. The following campuses reported deficits for their fiscal year. With their quarterly reports, campuses provided certifications of certain assurances about their operations. Campuses did not note any areas of immediate concern in their certifications. All certifications and individual university reports are available for review in the system office. This completes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Are there questions?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Who's that?
Donahoe.
Ms. Donahue?
Yes, in our August meeting, I think we talked about these HERF funds from the COVID-19. And you mentioned, sir, that there may be some deadlines in which those expenditures resulting from the various universities have to be met. Are we still okay with those deadlines, or is the money being spent appropriately and quickly?
Yes, ma'am. I think universities are spending that money. They're aware of the deadline, which in many cases is the end of spring semester. So there is some time left, but I've had discussions with CFOs at the universities, and they're well on their way to using that money.
Thank you.
Are there other questions, comments? Recognizing none, that completes the report of the Finance Committee. With that, I will yield the gavel back to the chair.
Next, we will have Ms. Donahoe, who will address the items under the Personnel Committee.
We have 3 items on the Personnel Committee agenda today, and they're being presented as consent agenda items. Ms. Keisha Neal will provide an overview of today's items. Keisha?
Thank you, Mrs. Donahoe. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Pierre, Dr. Henderson, and board members. Item K1 is Grambling State University's request for approval to appoint Dr. Debbie Thomas as Dean of the College of Education effective August 16, 2021. Item K2 is Northwestern State University's request for approval to appoint Dr. Mary Edith Stacy as interim dean of the College of Business and Technology effective September 6, 2021. Item K3 is University of Louisiana at Lafayette's request for approval to continue the appointment of Mr. Michael McClure as interim dean of the College of the Arts effective September 1st, 2021. Mrs. Donahoe, that concludes the items to be considered today.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Neal. These items have been reviewed by staff and are recommended for approval. Of course, if any member has a question or wishes to discuss them, please let me know. Any questions? Are there any comments from the public? If there's no discussion or if no one requires further clarification, I would ask that we have a motion and second to approve these items.
Alter for the motion.
Lusada, second.
Been moved by Mr. Salter, second by Mr. Posada. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? If not, that concludes the business of the Personnel Committee. And I'll yield the floor back to you, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Donahoe?
Yes.
We have Dr. Thomas on with us today from Grambling State University.
Great. Dr. Gallo, would you like to introduce?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and Chair and members of the board. Certainly an honor to introduce to all of you Dr. Debbie Thomas, who's joined us as our new Dean of the College of Education. She is a product of the UL system, being a graduate of formerly Northeast Louisiana University, obtaining her bachelor's and master's there. And of course, we're just really excited. She brings such a wealth of experience and background in the area. And I'd like to, at this time, present Dr. Thomas and ask her to say a few words.
Dr. Thomas, you do have to unmute, if you will.
Good. Would be
We're doing
good
it
to-
2 years.
Thank you very much. It is indeed an absolute honor to join you this afternoon. For me, it's a full circle moment. I have had the privilege of matriculating through kindergarten through secondary and post-secondary education as a part of the Louisiana K-12 system. And as President Gallo mentioned, I earned both my bachelor's and master's degrees in Louisiana as well. I've served in higher education now for over 30 years. And something that my parents, John and Nazarene Thomas, said to us, the 7 of us in rearing us, is that anything is possible. And in addition to choosing a career path, they asked us to also choose a manner in which we could be of service to others. And for me, that's been teacher education and higher education. So to my parents, I'm grateful to be able to return home and make a difference in my home state. And no place could be better for me to do that than at the historic Grambling State University. So I am so honored to be here and looking forward to serving for a long tenure. Thank you all so much.
And she did have a brother who played football at Grambling for legendary coach Eddie Robinson as well.
He did, and he is cheering for joy. And I had a sister also who attended Grambling State University. So we have a strong affinity and a connection to Grambling. So it's coming home for me in more ways than one.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. We definitely welcome you as the Dean, and we look forward to working with you as we go forward.
Thank you. I look forward as well.
I'd like to thank all of the committees at this time for your actions taken. And at this time, we'll move into our system president's report. Dr. Henderson, would you please present your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the board members were emailed the campus personnel actions for review. You also have system personnel actions for review. I would want to call your attention to one of those system personnel actions is the official addition of an expansion of scope and complexity to the role of Vice President Erica Calais, where we have officially added the Title IX coordinating role to her at the system level. Erica, for the last 2 years, has been leading our review and implementation of Title IX policies and power-based violence policies. She's been instrumental over the last year as that policy discussion was elevated. She testified with me last month at the Senate Select Committee on Women and Children, and continues to provide exemplary leadership in that regard. You will hear from her later, but I wanted to call your attention to that, and I wanted to thank her publicly for her leadership. Madam Chair, we did a motion and a second.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Donahoe, seconded by Mr. Romero. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As everyone knows, this week, Governor Edwards lifted the statewide mask mandate. And while we're all relieved at that, and it's a symbol that we have seen a reduction in the transmission and the number of infections that warranted that move. That led to a lot of conversations about mask wearing on our campuses. Just board members, I'll call your attention back to the first part of August of this year when we implemented our statewide framework for COVID-19. We actually had a mask requirement for all faculty, staff, and students in classrooms and in indoor spaces. That preceded the governor's reinstitution of the mask mandate by multiple hours, just barely. That requirement remains in place. That requirement is based on regional and community levels of transmission, and the CDC officially designates these areas as high or substantial transmission. When one of our universities is in one of those regions, that mask requirement is in place. All of them currently are. When they drop below that level, and in concert with other regional and local public health officials, an institution would be empowered then to remove that requirement. But as of now, that requirement is still in place in our classrooms, and I would be happy to answer any questions if those exist. But I think it's affirmed the level of virus transmission on our campus. The low level affirms the decisions that we've made in the past, and I continue to applaud our presidents for giving great leadership.
So would this be the campus by campus as different regions of the state go into that lower?
Yes, ma'am. Those are based on CDC recommendations. And in the first extraordinary session of 2020, the legislature passed an act that indemnified us against losses associated with COVID-19, provided that we follow the recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And so our policy has always been rooted in those CDC recommendations. Their recommendation in regions and communities of high and substantial transmission is for both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals to mask. So continue to follow that. We also continue to provide vaccination and testing on our campuses. We have great partnership with Louisiana National Guard and health partners. System-wide, approximately 80 to 85% of our faculty and staff are vaccinated. About 65% of our students are fully or partially vaccinated. As you know, as we added COVID-19 to the schedule of required immunizations on our campuses, that put registration holds on students to register for future semesters. And as those holds are in place, that's what's causing students, spurring them to go either become vaccinated or submit the paperwork associated with medical contraindication exemption or personal exemption. So we have seen a marked increase in the number of students vaccinated on our campus. You might have seen President Biden's recent executive order that mandates all federal employees and federal contractors to be vaccinated. The exemptions associated with that are significantly more narrow than they are for students. The exemptions associated with the federal employee and the federal contractor vaccination is medical contraindication or sincerely held religious belief. Now, all of our institutions receive some level of federal dollars, and several of them qualify as federal contractors. One example is the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. They have approximately $70 million in National Institute of Health funding alone. They recently received contract modifications from NIH that applies this federal contractor vaccine requirement to UL Lafayette. When you look at the scope of definitions associated with covered employees, it is essentially every employee at the university. So the university has sent notification to the employees of this new federal requirement. And we are working with those employees to ensure that they have all of the information that they need, that they have all the paperwork that they need, and that they have enough time to complete the requirements before December 8th. We want to work with them as they request religious or medical accommodations for those that do. I believe there's the vast majority of employees at UL Lafayette have already been immunized, been vaccinated. And so it's a number of employees we have to work with. We'll ensure that that process is as simple as our fiduciary responsibilities will allow. That will be a source of conversation, a lot of requests for information. We actually sent a notice to the Louisiana legislature explaining both our masking requirements and the vaccine requirements associated with the federal executive order. And we've received a number of questions, but most of those questions have been very constructive or designed to get information. It's not really been adversarial in the least. And I think that stems from the ability to give information ahead of time instead of all constantly reacting. But again, I want to thank President Savoy, his legal team, his HR team for responding very quickly and doing this in a constructive way. Now, since we last met, the first reporting deadline within Louisiana's new power-based violence legislation has passed. I'd like to ask Erica Calais to come forward to give us an update on our implementation and on that and other Title IX related items. And also she'll give us an update on the Northwestern State University presidential search, which she also coordinates. You might say that Erica has a full-time job, but Erica, if you don't mind, we'd appreciate your report now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to serve the system and our member institutions in this capacity. To Vice Chair Pierre and all of our supervisors, I really appreciate this opportunity. So all of our campuses have revised their power-based violence policies and associated processes, and those were finalized earlier this month. I want to thank our institution's Title IX coordinators as they have really been diligent about this work. They have done a remarkable job at turning this around so quickly. So I really appreciate the work that they've been doing with these policies. In the same vein, we have revised our UL system policies to align with the new legislative mandates as well as the Board of Regents uniform policies. We have revised our sexual misconduct policy. We've changed the title, so it'll read sexual misconduct and power-based violence. And we've also revised our transcript notation policy. We've included language in our transcript notation policy that is reflective of the language included in the Board of Regents uniform policy. For students who are trying to transfer, we will make some notations on their transcripts should they be involved in a Title IX or power-based violence investigation. On October 14th, our campuses were required to provide and post their annual safety reports as outlined in Act 447. As you may be aware, if an institution fails to comply with posting their campus security reports, then the State Bond Commission shall not authorize the institution to incur any debt that is subject to the approval of the commission for a period of 2 years. So it is, yes, just that serious. So fortunately, the Board of Regents has certified that all University of Louisiana system institutions were in compliance by the required deadline. The President's power-based violence data reports were due to our office on Sunday. Of course, they had them into us prior to that date. They turned them in by Friday of last week. And I will be preparing a comprehensive report to post to our website and to share with the board members. But as it stands, we have one institution that reported 2 incidents, and those incidents were resolved through an informal resolution process. And we have another institution who has had a power-based violence incident, and that incident is still under investigation. That is it. Regarding Title IX, our institutions are currently working on revising their MOUs, again, to align with the new legislation. And we have a self-imposed deadline here at the system office of December 15th. None of our institutions have reported any major issues that they foresee in getting these MOUs processed and signed and executed by the deadline. So we continue to work with them on that. Are there any questions regarding the work that we've been doing with Title IX power-based violence?
I have just one question.
Yes, ma'am.
In reviewing the notation of disciplinary actions, the draft that we were provided, I know in previous discussions, when we were discussing how a transcript might be notated if there was a pending disciplinary matter. One of the conundrums that I saw earlier was that a student who was initially facing a disciplinary matter could withdraw from the university, therefore shutting down that administrative matter, and then apply to a different university and basically shield that information. It's unclear from reading the draft that has been totally addressed, because it does say for a transferring student who is the subject of a pending investigation, the notation on the transcript shall read administrative matter pending. But is that in fact how it's going to work, or will in fact it have a notation even though the student's withdrawal has shut down or ended the investigation?
Okay, for students, I'm hoping that I'm understanding your question. So basically, for students who are involved in a sexual misconduct or power-based violence incident and who are currently, who is being investigated in attempts to transfer to another institution, well, that student's transcript will be held by the host institution. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is intended to, the way it's intended to work according to the document that we received. But my understanding was that a student could actually stop an investigation and end the investigation once they withdrew. Since they were no longer there, the investigation would shut down, it would be ended, and therefore that student would be clear to just apply to another UL system university and move forward without any record of the charges having been made. But I think in previous discussions that our universities had indicated that would not happen that way.
Correct. I cannot see where a respondent would have the opportunity, right, to end an investigation without going through the appropriate process.
Yeah, I think the issue is you can't give a student due process if they have left. There can be no hearings.
Right. Exactly. Now I see what you mean.
Yeah, so they're actually, they're in charge of, they're in control of, making sure that their record stays clear by just withdrawing. And that's how it was written up before I had expressed some concerns about that. My understanding was that was being addressed, but I'm not sure based on the documents that we have.
Ms. Methvin, Supervisor Methvin, that is addressed, and that is actually covered in the actual power-based violence policy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
So just to be clear, Supervisor Method, once a student, once an issue has been, a charge or an allegation has been made, a hold is automatically added to, or not automatically, it's added to the student's transcript. Is that correct, Erica?
Yes.
And withdrawal does not remove that hold from the transcript. The transcript is still held, so the student would still have to come back. It would have to be adjudicated, settled before that hold is released from the transcript.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
You're welcome. Any other questions concerning that? Okay, well, then I'll move on to just update you on the presidential search. We actually had a great pool of individuals who expressed interest in the position. And as of the preferred application date, there were 26 individuals who expressed interest and 3 nominations. System staff recommended 13 applicants to the search committee for consideration at the October 14th search committee meeting. The committee selected 6 semifinalists who will be interviewed next week at Northwestern State. The interviews will be held on Monday and Tuesday. The semifinalists will also get an opportunity to engage with stakeholders during their time on campus. On Tuesday evening, the committee will deliberate and select finalists for you to interview at the special board meeting on November the 8th. As you can imagine, the campus community is excited about meeting and engaging with the candidates. We've spoken with all 6 candidates and they are equally as excited about this opportunity. So hopefully come next Tuesday evening, we'll have some wonderful finalists for you all to meet the following Monday. Any questions?
Erica,
that concludes my report.
Appreciate you very much.
Absolutely.
Shifting gears to Grambling State, we received a number of public comments earlier that were general in nature, talking about facilities at Grambling State. President Gallo addressed those in the facilities conversation, and we'll continue to work with him to ensure that the resources are put in place to continue the progress that they've made, and then to help in implementation of the master plan, which I think is extraordinary. The other comments that we received that were general in nature, and just for you to know as board members and for those that are watching, the public comments that will be read verbatim are those that address a particular agenda item. General comments are taken into account. We will address those individually, as we already have with some that I had a request earlier this morning from a Grambling alum who is from the Windy City, from Chicago area, asking about funding and how funding relates between Grambling and how it compares to other institutions. We were able to provide him with some detailed information on the state's funding formula, which is goodness, it's very complex, but there's everything from a short 4-page description of that to a much longer history of that. And we'll continue to answer those questions as they come up. But the other questions, the comments that we've had deal with safety. And as you all know, earlier this month during homecoming week, some senseless acts occurred at Grambling State and 2 shootings on campus, both done by non-student event participants. It's prompted a strong response from President Gallo and the Grambling community. And I asked President Gallo if he would mind updating the board on the work that's being done now and the long-term vision that he has to address this going forward. President Gallo.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson, and to the Madam Chair and members of the board and the public who may be tuned in. Of course, we had our first homecoming post pandemic, and one that, as one of the alums I spoke to last week said, was 99% successful. That we had so many alums and visitors and others who came to Grambling to experience homecoming, return home safely with a great experience having been back on campus. Unfortunately, on Wednesday morning, and I don't have the calendar in front of me, but during that homecoming week, received a call about 1:30 a.m. to advise me that there had been a shooting on campus involving 16-year-old and 19-year-old from Rayville, Louisiana, and I believe 18 or 19-year-old from Delhi, Louisiana, who had apparently some sort of ongoing dispute that somehow brought them to our campus, and a shooting did take place, and a non-student unfortunately was fatality in that incident. Now, from a security standpoint, obviously, whenever we have special events, and homecoming now, of course, would be one of those. We routinely bring in outside agencies to assist and support our university police department. And so throughout that week, we had in excess of 11, actually 12 outside agencies supporting our university police department. So there was certainly no shortage of law enforcement presence on our campus. And again, after the Wednesday event, then that Saturday night or early morning of Sunday, there was another shooting. And again, involving non-students. There was one graduate student who was injured. Thank God she was released from the hospital earlier this week and is at home recovering. And so, as I've had so many conversations over the past week and a half, and one that stands out is with Senator Katrina Jackson, who said, Rick, this is so much bigger than just Grambling, that the proliferation of weapons in the hands of young people and the senseless violence that is taking place is something that we've got to get a grip on. And so what we've done in response, and the Louisiana State Police has handled both investigations, and I would certainly defer to them to talk about the progress of those investigations. But we've had Colonel Lamar Davis, as well as Lieutenant Colonels Van Buren and Cameron and Major Williams to visit the campus, and they have pledged all resources necessary to not only fully investigate and catch those responsible, but also as we continue to move forward in our master plan, helping us to plan and strategize on how we make our campus safer. We have, in consultation with our student government leaders, Cameron Jackson, our student government president, and others, implemented a curfew. And so we've got a 9:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. We do have checkpoints that are corresponding with those evening curfews, which actually we had implemented those last year in dealing with COVID. Of course, when we first set them up, it was to keep those outsiders off the campus who may have been infected with COVID. So those are what we'll call our short-term responses to this. And so we've got a short-term, midterm, and long-term responses to it. And as I mentioned, we've been engaged in master planning over the last 10 months. And in addition to our academic, athletic, housing components, there is also a campus safety component. So we've already met with our consultant to accelerate the campus safety component, which will have not only physical barriers and other matters to restrict outside access to our campus, but also an overlay of technology that we will implement, and again had already intended to implement even before all of this came up. So this is work that we've been engaged in. As I mentioned earlier, the last master plan that was done on our campus was 2007 by former President Judson. So we are moving forward with that work, and to the extent that I could answer any additional questions, Dr. Henderson, I would be happy to do so.
President Gallo, thank you for your leadership in that regard. We have also worked with other state leaders to talk about the funding necessary for the physical barriers, for the electronic barriers. If you go into the city of London today, they know that you're in the city of London, whether it's with facial recognition, whether it's with license plate readers. There are a number of electronic tools that are available. And our goal is to ensure that Grambling becomes the model for not only our system, but for the country in utilizing the latest technology, provide a secure campus. And for both of us, you know, all of our campuses have some similarities, but they have a lot of distinct differences in terms of access to the campuses. We have some campuses where you have through roadways that are just, you know, it's people in the city drive through the campus to go from point A to point B. And we have other campuses that are much more easily to secure. Northwestern State has 4 entrances, 3 of which can be locked down. And when you go into one of those entrances, it's because you're going onto that campus. But there's also a lot of similarities in the way that we approach security and safety. So Marcus Jones actually had a group meeting with all the heads of police to talk through these issues, to share best practices, to continue that working relationship. It is an ongoing pursuit. Whenever we have these senseless acts that have no place in society, let alone on a college campus, it gains attention. It gains attention from everybody. Our pledge is that it's not going to wane just because you go a period of time without an act of violence. We're going to use these examples to ensure that we're securing these campuses and doing our due diligence to make sure that the campus community is safe. It is it's a troubling conversation anytime you're dealing with issues of violence, and you're not talking about education, you're not talking about student support, you're not talking about workforce development on the positive side. Instead, you're reacting to nonsensical behavior. This will be an issue that I think will be elevated to the board level for some time, and we'll continue to provide updates as we make progress. President Gallup, thank you for that.
And Dr. Henderson, I could just add in conclusion that, you know, Monday we will celebrate our 120th anniversary as an institution. Of course, Grambling was founded in 1901. And so we are absolutely committed to continuing the great legacy of Grambling State University. These events will not define us. We have faced challenges before, and we will certainly face and push through these as well. And certainly I appreciate your support and support of all our partners in seeing that we continue to keep our students safe. And I thank our students for their resilience and for their commitment, and also for all of our sister institutions that have helped us in providing counseling services and other support services for our students that we've needed to help them get through this. So again, I just thank everyone and look forward to, again, moving us forward.
Thank you, President Gallo. So members, our Management and Leadership Institute's 5th cohort is well underway. In fact, they'll be at Grambling State shortly as their visit to that campus. This class is a diverse group of faculty and staff who eagerly contribute to their institutions and collectively have the potential to significantly impact our students. They're already leaders in their own right, but they're the future higher level leaders of our institutions. They've had meetings at UL Lafayette, Southeastern ULM. They'll be at Grambling next month. They'll be at Natchitoches in December. I'm sure that's coincidental that they'll be in Natchitoches in December at Northwestern State. We'll leave that there. I know they look forward to meeting you all next spring when they present their final projects to our board and our presidents. The For Our Future Conference for 2022, and I have to keep looking to make sure that's not a misprint. We are approaching the year 2022. Our For Our Future Conference will be in Natchitoches, scheduled for January 26th through 28th. We hope you'll mark this on your calendars. We hope to see you there. This year's conference is focused on the core of the UL system and our member institutions, our core community, our core mission, and our core performance. Our call for proposals will be released next week with an emphasis on diversity and inclusion, innovation, and technology. We look forward to gathering again to strategize and think about the future of our students, our member institutions, and our state. You may remember, members, where we did a presentation to you on content experts that was formed under the leadership of Dr. Khan and her team and others at the system level. In the past month, 2 of our system content experts have hosted webinars in their areas of focus. Beth Blankenship, who's our content expert for online teaching and learning, co-presented on trauma-informed teaching with University of New Orleans Center for Teaching and Innovation Assistant Director Meredith King, and Nichols Program Director for Secondary Science Education, Amy Hollander. In addition, Carla Howe, who's our content expert for research and grants, welcomed the Board of Regents Enhancement Program Manager Brian Jones for a session on the BOR Support Fund. Now, Carla is offering her next webinar, Pathways to Grant Success and Harnessing the Power of Spin Plus. It sounds like it should be in politics, not necessarily in content, but we'll leave that there next month. A mental health focused webinar with content expert Terry Dilks will be held in December. Recordings of these past webinars are available on the UL System YouTube channel. Lastly, we have, just to let you know, we updated our system name change policies and guidelines. The policy hadn't been touched since 1998, and the changes merely cleaned up some extraneous language. You received a copy of the policy in your email yesterday, and the updated policy is available on our website. Lastly, I want to congratulate the Southeastern Louisiana University homecoming queen, because she happens to be a member of our board, L'Oreal Williams, the SGA president there. And congratulations to you, L'Oreal. What an extraordinary accomplishment for a SGA president in her second term. And now, members, have been provided the documents associated with evaluation of campus presidents. Would like to go into executive session to answer any questions you may have on those documents. Madam Chair, we would need a motion in a second to enter executive session.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Stevens and second by Ms. Donahoe. Any discussion? All those in favor? I think,
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, we need a roll call vote. Ms. Carroll?
Mr. Barry Busada,
Aye.
Dr. Jimmy Clark,
Yes.
Dr. John Condos, Mr. Steve Davison,
Yes.
Ms. Lola Donahoe, Ms. Mimi Methvin,
Yes.
Mr. Al Perkins, Mr. Dana Peterson,
Yes.
Ms. Elizabeth Pierre, Mr. Virgil Robinson, Mr. Mark Romero,
Yes.
Ms. Christine Russell,
Yes.
Mr. Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mr. Brad Stevens,
Yes.
Ms. L'Oreal Williams. We have a quorum. It's approved.
Unanimous. Thank you.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Members, I believe you don't need to do anything, and if you will ensure that everyone will be able to go into executive session. I think her magic makes this happen.
Do we have any board members who have not been moved into executive session?
Are we all back in?
Everyone's out now.
Okay, thank you. The Board of Supervisors for the University of Louisiana System met in executive session, discussed personnel matters. While in executive session, no motions were made nor votes taken. Is there a motion to reconvene in open session?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Supervisor Stevens, second by Supervisor Romero. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Henderson. At this time, we'll do the board chair's report. Regarding commencements, Sandra Green will be sending an email reminder early next week to encourage your attendance at one or more of the campus's fall commencement ceremonies. Please visit the link that will be included to register your attendance. Nominating Committee. At this time, it is time for the board to begin its to consider officers for 2022. To that end, I will appoint a nominating committee. And onto that committee, I would like to appoint our former chairman, Supervisor Al Perkins, Supervisor Mark Romero, and our board member, Ms. Christine Russell, to serve on the nominating committee, which will meet sometime before the December board meeting and make recommendation for officers at that meeting. Training reminders. Bruce Janae wants to remind you that all board members must complete the Preventing Sexual Harassment and Ethics courses before the end of the year. Contact him if you need links to complete those. Moving to other business, our next two meetings, we have already announced that we will be having a special board meeting in Baton Rouge on November 8th to interview the finalists in the Northwestern presidential search. Then on December 9th, we have our last regular board meeting of the year. At this time, we are planning on having that December meeting be virtual. Is there any further business to come before the board at this time?
Madam Chairwoman, do we have any update on the opioid money? Or is that going to be reported on at the time, Madam Chairwoman or Mr. President?
Speaker Salter, we will have an update on that at the December meeting. And your Counsel DeQueer is sitting in the room and hearing me say that, so, and nodding vigorously, or not vigorously, whatever.
Yes, thank you, Supervisor Salter.
Chairman, will that November 8th meeting be virtual, or will we all gather here in Baton Rouge?
I think the plan is to be here in person.
Plans to gather in person.
Good. To be in person. Right. Any other questions? Any other items for discussion?
I'm sorry, can you remind me, or maybe you said this and I missed it, what time are we meeting on November 8th?
I don't think it's been set yet. I'll make sure.
Oh, if I can interject, I think we planned on meeting at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Erica, we may make that 10 o'clock.
I think
For
that
those
would
that
be
need to
better.
travel in.
So people traveling in don't have to come in the night before.
Like 10 a.m. on November 8th. Any other questions, concerns, issues? Okay, well, if there's no further business to come before the board at this time, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Stevens.
Second.
Second by Ms. Donahoe. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, thank you all so much, and for the rest of your.
Thank you.
Thank you.